name is Melissa Meredith, your host for the Daily Wellness Podcast. If your day could use a dose of healthy living inspiration, you're in the right place. Call me a crunchy mom, health nerd, whatever. I'm just a normal mom trying to do what's best for her family, and I happen to love talking about all things health and wellness. Join me as we learn from like-minded people, change the health legacy of our families, and take our wellness to the next level. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. There is almost always more than one root cause. This is one of my favorite takeaways from today's episode. In Lianna Souder's story, many factors took a toll on her health. Pharmaceuticals, brain injury, parasites, an eating disorder, trauma, and stress, to name a few. But instead of becoming a victim to these circumstances and choices, and instead of blaming it on her genetics, she took initiative to find answers and get help. She took responsibility for her own health, and now she helps others do the same as a functional nutrition counselor. Hey, if you want to hear your name in a review shout out, leave a review on the Apple Podcast app. This week's review shout out is for Monster Rocks. Your podcast has inspired me to start with making a list, and that list will start with cleaning out the pantry and fridge to make room for healthier foods for my family and I, followed by other healthier changes. Woohoo! Pantry cleanouts are pretty serious. Awesome to hear about the changes that you're making. I think you'll get even more ideas from this week's guest. Now, here's your dose of daily wellness. Today we have the beautiful Lianna Souder with us, and I would love for you guys to meet her. So can you introduce yourself to us, Lianna?
Hi, yes. So as Melissa just said, my name is Lianna Souder. I am a mom of a beautiful, almost 16-month now, little boy. I've been married for going on 3 years now. So, yeah, we live in Pennsylvania. I'm just super passionate about health and wellness. I have been for many years now. I feel like it kind of started when I had my own health issues going on that started way back years ago. And so that kind of kickstarted my interest in nutrition and fitness and all that. And I know we'll kind of go into more detail on all that stuff. But yeah, I'm just super passionate now about just helping others and helping them avoid what I've had to go through and all the wild goose chases and learn from my mistakes, and hopefully, help prevent others from dealing with and suffering through certain things that they may not need to if they take the right preventative measures, or just even treating something sooner than later so it doesn't spiral and get worse, and then you have like a whole plethora of issues to try to figure out. Then it's like once you can see something's wrong, it's best to just get it right then and there, So that's what I am super passionate about right now.
I love that. I think that's similar to myself. I really have a heart to just help people get started on their health journey so that they don't get to a really bad place. I mean, when you hear statistics like, 1 in 3 people are going to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, that's very sobering. And so if I can, help people see that there is a way to kind of take control of your health and, live in a way that prevents a lot of illness, then that would make me so happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would love to learn from your health story. Can you kind of tell us? I mean, you mentioned some of the, going through some hard things in your health journey. So could you kind of go into that for us?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a long story. I've had quite the list of things, but I'll try to keep it brief enough.
That's okay. Give us all the juicy details.
All right. So yeah, it basically started when I was about 13. I had my first concussion, and that really threw things off for me. Because traumatic brain injuries, whether mild or severe, can just play such a huge role and impact on our health. And one of the biggest things too then was we didn't know I had a concussion until like a month after I had it, because symptoms didn't start right away, and we didn't know a whole lot about concussions at the time. So that first month is super crucial for healing, and I wasn't doing anything for it. So I ended up with post-concussion syndrome for quite some time. And then I ended up I've had multiple concussions, I think, through the years, probably like 7-ish. And people look at me like I have two heads when I say that. But I played a lot of sports and was just like very active growing up and through high school and college and all that. So I have quite the stories for those. But
Yeah.
anyways,
I don't
so
have any concussions, but I have lots of scars from those athletic events.
yep, sure are memorable. Um, yeah, so that was like the start of things, and things weren't like super bad till several years later. I think that was just kind of like the undercurrent, and then things just progressively got worse through the years. So I did actually have an eating disorder when I was in high school, and I think that also played a role in just messing things up.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the Lord freed me from that several years ago, and that's a whole testimony in itself. But sadly, like that does have effects on our bodies. So I think that also played a role. And then what really threw me through the ringer, I actually lived in Nepal for a few months, from at the end of 2017 to the beginning of 2018. And I had a couple of parasites while I was there. And well, the parasites themselves did a number on me, but then the medication I was given for that just wrecked me. It just shot my whole digestive system, and I basically had to like rebuild it from scratch. Um,
Wow.
so I then was like diagnosed with IBS after that when I came home. I was able to heal my gut that year. And I was doing really well. Like my hormones, my gut health was doing great for a while. And then at the end of 2019, things just triggered up again from stress, overworking, over exercising. I'll kind of give a background of that. So at the time, I was working two jobs, as a personal trainer and a nanny and a wellness coach. Um, well, the personal training and wellness coach were at the same place. Anyways, so I some of the days I'd be working the 5:30 shift, and then after that I'd be working like 14 or 11-hour days. So that was like my work day. And then I also helped teach some group classes, and we did pretty intense workouts. So I think it was just a combination. Oh, and then I was also planning a wedding. I was planning
Wow.
my wedding. I got married in 2020. Um, so yeah, between planning a wedding, working a ton, over exercising, not sleeping enough, it just, you know,
Yeah,
it,
like you had multiple stress factors going on in your life there.
exactly. It's perfect storm. So that really just threw me off for a while. So then, towards the end of that year, I started seeking out functional medicine, and just root cause healing to really get to the root of things. Um, and I was able to find out some answers with that, like finding certain deficiencies I had, into inflammation and whatnot. So that was helpful. And although I wasn't a fan, the one guy I saw, he was a functional medicine, but I didn't love. He put me on birth control because I had I had PCOS,
Yeah.
um, and so he put me on birth control for it. And I was at the time I didn't know what I know now about it, but I still was like iffy about it. But he made it seem like, oh, it was the best option, so I just went with it. But a few months in, I was just like, no, I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good on it. Just didn't have peace about it. So I got off of it, and I started balancing my hormones, just with other natural ways. Um, and that slowly was progressing. Then towards the end of 2020, I ended up having a miscarriage, an early miscarriage. So that was hard, as you can imagine, and anybody else who's had a miscarriage.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It's like it's an emotional and physical stress on your body.
Yeah.
Um, but I was able to well, I just kept doing what I was doing, and just processing, going through counseling, lots of prayer and community helped a lot. And anyways, in January, end of January, I got pregnant again with my son and had a healthy pregnancy and perfectly healthy baby. And it's just, he's my beautiful rainbow baby, and just such a testimony to God's goodness. And, it is possible to heal our bodies. It is possible to have um, a healthy baby after loss. So I, as much as that part of my story is painful, I'm also thankful for it because I know that God's used it and is using it, and I can just be a testimony in that way too, and that's just another area that I can help people. After that, I ended up with my son, his birth. It was an emergency C-section, so that in itself was another trauma, and the medications I was on and stuff really affected my gut as well. Um, and then with breastfeeding, it's easy if you're not careful to be depleted of nutrients. So I've really had to make sure there was a lot of like reevaluation the past year plus.
Yeah.
And I was able to heal my gut again pretty well. Like I felt good. Things were getting better and better. But then a few months back, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, I was just in a really stressful time and things just got triggered up again. If you can't tell, stress is a big trigger for me.
Yeah.
And it's a big trigger for a lot of people. And I think
I think
we
so too.
underestimate how, how like not, I don't know if powerful is the right word, but like just the effect that stress has on us and how it really can just do a number on us. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've been in a new protocol just with healing my gut and everything. So that's kind of where I'm currently at, is getting that addressed again. And this time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get it really to the root of things, and hopefully it like won't get triggered again, but we'll see. I will say though, my PCOS has been under control, and that's been steady. So I'm thankful for that. Because I know a lot of women struggle with that too. And then especially like postpartum, it's really common.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
common for a lot of women in general, but yeah.
Yeah. How did
So
that feel when you were getting to a good place after the C-section and things were looking up, and then to have that kind of setback induced by stress?
it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. Um, yeah, at first it was super discouraging because I was like, okay, I've been down this road before. I thought it was getting better. And it was, I had a bit of that imposter syndrome. I was like, how can I help other people? And it's like I can't even help myself. Or it's like I thought I was better and I'm not. But I mean, that's, it just goes to show that like our bodies are so complex, and healing takes time. Like it didn't take me overnight to get to this place. Like as I just shared, it's been years of things adding up to get my body in the state it's at, and so it's not going to heal overnight.
Right.
um,
It's going to take a while to unwind.
but
Yeah.
on the other hand, like the good part of that is, they're designed to heal. Our bodies are designed to return to homeostasis and to function,
Right.
right? So we just need to find the ways to help our bodies do that.
So
um,
what were some of those steps when you're like, okay, I can tell that some of my symptoms are returning, that the stress is impacting me. Like, what are some of the first steps that you took at that point?
I'd say definitely like reevaluating my life and everything going on, and trying to eliminate as many stressors as possible. And also getting more sleep, because that was another big thing. I was not getting enough sleep at the time. I still
Well,
don't get enough
let's say
sleep,
you have a baby.
right? As moms, we do what we can, right?
Yes.
But I have been like making more of an effort to sleep more, and that's definitely helped. So yeah, definitely like eliminating stress as much as possible, and trying to sleep more and fuel up my body with specific nutrients that like I knew would help me and the specific things I was dealing with. Like I generally do eat well and whole foods, but um like, there's so many different foods and so many that are good for different things, different nutrients. So I kind of just wrote out a list of certain foods and their vitamins and minerals that corresponded with things I was dealing with, like hypothyroid and PCOS. And it's like, okay, what foods can help my body heal and create, the thyroid hormones or whatever.
Right. Can you
So
give me a couple examples? I'm just curious, like what helps with hypothyroid?
yeah. Well, avocados are a really good one. And eggs. It's funny because a lot of the foods I ended up writing down, I was like already eating, but a lot of the nutrients needed for thyroid, like iodine and zinc, protein, selenium, um, B12, tyrosine, those are all super important.
Yeah, I
Um,
love that. I love that you just went into research mode and figured that out. And then your first thought was, I'm going to get this from my food. I love that.
and our adrenals too. That's a huge thing because our adrenals, they play a role in thyroid function and also stress and the stress hormone, cortisol. And so, yeah, ways you can support your adrenals: vitamin C, magnesium, B complex, or like adaptogens like maca root, ashwagandha. Those are a couple examples. With stress, with cortisol, my cortisol was elevated. I had some blood work done, and I had a feeling it was elevated because I could just tell. And my cortisol had been elevated like a couple years ago. I knew how it felt. I knew what I did to lower it again. But so I had that blood work, and that confirmed what I was suspecting. So that was another thing I did. But anyway, so with cortisol, when it's elevated, um, that just kind of causes us to be in a constant anxious, stressed out state,
Hmm.
which, throws our body into fight or flight, rather than rest and digest. And so that, that throws our body through a loop too, because like
Yeah. So your stress is affecting your gut. That's so good. That's such a good point.
yeah, and it affects sleep. And then the sleep affects that. And it's like this cycle. You got to break the cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. One other thing that you've kind of mentioned a few times that I wanted to ask about was you mentioned taking medication for parasites and how that really was not good on your gut, and then how you did not do well on birth control, and then how medication after C-section, wasn't good for you either, like as far as your gut health. And so, can you kind of talk about that a little bit more? Like, what role does medication, like how does that connect to our gut health?
Yeah. That's something too that I've been like diving into more recently and really wanting to learn more about, like, how does it affect our guts? Because I know it does. I I've heard from so many like naturopathic doctors, even some like in the medical field will admit this too, which is great. And obviously I've experienced it. Um, but yeah, like, I mean, we know medications and drugs themselves are created just to mask symptoms rather than getting to the root of the problem. And, depending on what ingredients are in there too, and then whatever medication it is, they can really affect and disrupt things in our gut, and mess with the microbiome, especially like taking antibiotics. Um, like, I know sometimes those like are necessary,
Yeah.
like save a life, but I always like to avoid those as first. Like, I always like to try other things instead, like
Yeah, I
garlic.
think it doesn't, I think birth control especially really depletes key nutrients in our bodies.
Yes, it really does. Um, that's a big one. And birth control actually is a group 1 carcinogen. I don't know if you knew that,
Yeah,
but
I did know that. I've been trying to spread the word because it's so
yeah.
frustrating to me. I am totally fine with women taking birth control, if they feel like that's the best choice for them, if they're educated about it. But I know when it was offered to me, there were no conversations about the negative side effects of birth control and what it's really doing to my body and my gut health and all the things, and the fact that it's a class 1 carcinogen. And that just frustrates me, that women aren't told that information.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like it further disrupts your hormones too, because it's synthetic hormones. It's like pumping through your body and your body doesn't know what to do with that. And then just in general with just medicating symptoms and not treating the root, like the root cause is gonna get worse. Like it's not gonna get better over time if you're not doing anything about it. Like it's just gonna keep getting worse. And so by masking the symptoms and basically avoiding the problem, like you're just digging yourself in a deeper hole until it gets to the point where no medication can mask the symptoms, and then you're like, okay, I'm desperate, I need help now, I need to get to the root of this. And I that's what I try to help people avoid. Because yeah, it sucks to be in that like desperate place.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that's when people start seeking alternate, options for health and lifestyle and diet and all the things, because they've tried the medication for so long and they've come to a point, where it's no longer helping anymore. It's not getting them as far as they want. They're not enjoying life, not feeling good, having side effects, whatever. And then they
Yeah.
start seeking other answers. And so that's what I'm hoping, people listening to the Daily Wellness Podcast will get some inspiration and hope for the situations that they're in, hearing your stories like yours, and that they'll be able to get to the root of some of these, really serious issues that they have that are, just taking away from enjoying life. That's what I hope, that they can really get to the place where they're experiencing abundant life again, the life that we were really created to have. That phrase "to the root" is something that you've said several times. Can you kind of explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. And what's actually interesting too is a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I need to get to the root, like the one root cause." But actually, there's most, if not all the time, more than one root cause. And it's always related to digestive dysfunction, inflammation, and our genes and how our genes are expressing themselves.
Mm.
So I'll go into a little more depth about that. So with the digestive dysfunction, so let's say, someone has a hormone imbalance, and so, they're taking they're eating certain foods, taking certain supplements, whatever, trying to balance their hormones, but it's not working. Well, why? Because their body's not absorbing the nutrients they're intaking, because their digestion isn't optimal. Their digestion isn't functioning properly. So they're not able to absorb nutrients. And so that in itself can cause a lot of issues. Like poor digestion causes, that's what can cause autoimmune issues, because that's an immune response when our bodies. So I'm gonna like go on a little tangent.
Yeah.
And try to make sense. It's like the stuff makes sense in my head, and I have to make it make sense for other people who don't get it.
Yeah, give us the details.
So I'm gonna try to explain this clearly. Because also mom brain, it's hard to think straight. But anyway, so I don't know if you've heard of, well, you've probably heard the phrase leaky gut, but the term is gut hyperpermeability. So that's basically where there's gaps in the intestinal lining. So food nutrients basically slip through into the bloodstream. But the thing is, our bloodstream, it only knows how to process like the very broken down nutrients. And so when we have leaky gut, before our bodies fully break down those nutrients, if they're like not able to, or even if it's before that stage in the digestion process, it seeps through those holes in the lining. And so then it goes into the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream, it can't recognize it as food because it's too small to be food, but it's also too big to be those broken down particles that it absorbs and utilizes throughout the body. So then the immune system reacts, and the immune system will send, inflammation and different things to attack that because it views it as an invader because it's not what the body's, supposed to be circulating.
Yeah.
So that is what can cause a lot of health issues, from autoimmune to hormone imbalances to cognitive and neurological issues, even like Alzheimer's, um, and even some cancers that's can be rooted in gut health, and also just um, environmental toxins and stuff like that, which I'll get into that when it comes to gene expression. Um, but there can be many roots to one thing, and there can be a lot of factors to it because everything in the body's connected, like the immune system, to the digestive, to the endocrine, to the neurological, like everything's connected. And so if one thing's thrown off, it can throw off another thing and another thing, and then it can also just cause a cycle. So what I help people do is, finding how we can break that cycle, and where are the triggers, how did these things even come about. So yeah. And then with the gene expression, it's interesting. um I've briefly talked about this before on my page, but like a lot of times people assume, oh, because this is, I have this gene or this disease or whatever runs in my family, I'm doomed to get it. But like that's not actually true, because yeah, you might be at like slightly greater risk for it, but what really causes us to fall into that is lifestyle, and whether that be just stress, food we're eating, environmental toxins, all that stuff plays a part, even our mindset. Um, so think about it like, I've used this analogy before, is where, imagine you have like a loaded gun, and that's your genes, is a loaded gun. But what pulls the trigger is your lifestyle. And so we can actually change our gene expression and how they, like, if we can control if they like turn on or off by certain things we do with our lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm really glad you shared that. I think that's something that can give people a lot of hope if they have had just, generational sickness, disease, cancers. There are things that we can do to change that in our families.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Really beautiful how our body works together. As you mentioned, how it's all connected, and how fixing one thing also helps the other things get better as well. So one other question I have is about you as a mom. You have a 16-month-old, and I just really want to know how you, as a functional nutrition counselor, are going to help your kid eat healthy food.
Yeah, well, it's funny because he recently has entered the picky eating stage. So, it's been a little bit of a struggle lately. But yeah, it's hard too because he's at the age where you can't really reason with him either
Yeah, for
because
sure.
he's young. But I really do want to help him understand and just have a good relationship with food, and understanding the importance of food and nutrients, and that like, hey, when I eat this, I don't feel so good, and this has an effect, a negative effect. Like, it's okay sometimes to have this treat or whatever, but we don't want this to make it all that we eat, because I don't feel good on it. When I eat this, I do feel good, and this is going to help me grow up big and strong. Like putting it in simple terms
Yeah, I
for
love that.
kids. And then yeah, you can hide vegetables and stuff in food. There's a lot of different ways. You can Pinterest recipes, or there's different groups on Facebook too. Moms will post recipes and stuff, and how
Yes,
they,
thank goodness for that.
right?
Yeah, one thing I always told my kids is that we want to eat the food that God made. So most of the time, in our diet overall, we want to just be eating food that God made. And that really helped them, have a clear picture of, like, they can ask themselves, is this something that people made, in a factory somewhere, or is it something that God made and you could just go pick out of your backyard, basically? So that's
Yeah.
one little teachable moment that I had with my kids.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, for sure. And what about your spouse? You're 3 years married. Have you guys kind of been on the same page with health, or how's that going?
He's he's slowly getting there. He definitely we're like polar opposites. But I've had some influence on him, and he's getting better and better as time goes on.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's awesome. I think a lot of people can relate to that. You are on a journey yourself, but then you have these people in your life, your family, especially that, obviously you're doing life with and doing meals with all the time. And so it's important to at least communicate well, I think, even if you're not exactly on the same page, is like, hey, this is what is important to me. This is what I'm really going to focus on. And I think you off of that, you can build like some respect for each other at the very least. And I've just heard great stories about people who, are on their health journey and trying to bring their families along with them, which is really one of my passions. And just having like such great results with that and having it bring them closer together, as a family and as a couple.
yeah.
So, three questions for you that I like to end all of our podcasts with. And the first one is, what healthy living resource would you recommend to someone that's just kind of getting started and trying to learn about health?
Okay. Well, can I give two? One Instagram,
Absolutely.
one podcast. Okay. So for Instagram accounts, I love um the account Just Ingredients. If someone's looking for, safer swaps, and whether it be, household, personal products, or food, she really does a great job at showing ingredients and what aren't good and better options, and affordable ones too. So she's a good
Awesome.
one. Natural Nurse Mama. Um, and the Mama is spelled Momma. She's another awesome resource, and she also has a podcast called the Red Pill Podcast. And she's super awesome. Her
Awesome.
page is super informative. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll make sure I link both of those in the show notes so everybody can find them. What about a healthy snack? What's one of your favorites?
I'd say my go-to lately, well, actually right now I'm on an elimination diet, so sadly I can't eat this right now. Hummus is, if anybody knows me, they know I love hummus. I could eat it all day, every day. But yeah, hummus with either like veggies or I love the Siete grain-free tortilla chips.
Yes, those are so good.
It's really good. Or like rice crackers or something. Or a little bit of like turkey lunch meat with it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love it. Get that
And
protein in
honestly,
your
anything with hummus.
mouth. And last question is, who would you love to see as a guest on the Daily Wellness Podcast?
Well, I mentioned her already, Lauren, who is Natural Nurse Mama. I think she'd be awesome. And like I said, she already has a podcast too. So
Yeah.
you could, link up and swap podcast maybe or something. That would be cool to hear her interviewed too.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be a really good one. I want
Yeah.
to thank you so much for joining us. If people want to connect with you and learn more from you, like how can they find you?
Yeah. So my Instagram page is Holistic Fitness and Faith. Holistic is spelled WHO, not HO, holistic. And you can link it too in the show notes so they can find me. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, and then I have a link tree in my bio if anybody would like to schedule just a free short phone call, just to chat, and if they have health concerns or whatever and they're thinking about maybe doing some functional nutrition counseling, I do have offer that in there. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for offering that. We appreciate your time so much. I know this is going to help a lot of people. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you for having me. It's fun to talk about all this stuff.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.